because I'm concerned about sharia law, which in many cases is being enacted de facto in Michigan.
Where would that be happening?
There have been a number of examples in the Dearborn area. Last month there was a meeting in Allegan that was shut down because CARE wrote a letter. And it was a meeting on the Constitution that I had attended, and they just came in and shut the meeting down. So there's now a lawsuit pending, but when you're dealing with CARE, you're going to deal with lawsuits, so we need to protect our freedom.
What do you think, who is leading the charge? Are they taking away women's rights? Is that what you're concerned about with Sharia law?
I'm more concerned about the teachings of the Quran, particularly the Medina chapters. A lot of people don't know that the Quran is actually an abrogated document, and it's not arranged in chronological order. So there are peaceful, very peaceful chapters from the early Mecca period, but by the time you get to the history of the Medina period, the message changes completely.
What about the things in the Christian Bible that talk about slavery and beating women?
There's no universal command in the Bible to kill everyone who doesn't accept it. That's the major difference.
We are at capacity, and we'd like to begin.
Mark Gurley, and I've been working with Representative Agema on this bill, and I am thrilled to be here. It's also my privilege to open this in prayer. Before I open in prayer, I just want to talk a little bit about praying. This is America. We are supposed to pray. I printed up 10,000 of these bookmarks, and what's left is on the back table. They've been distributed all over the state. They explain the issue of this bill and who to pray for, and then how to take action. And I'm trying to get Christians and Jews from around the state in their times of prayer on Tuesday to make calls to the people who are blocking the legislation. So if you haven't grabbed one of these, grab one. If you have influence in your church, your synagogue, or other groups, grab a few and pass them around, because the idea is to get 500 to 1,000 calls occurring every Tuesday so that they take some action on this. So it's important. Faith without works is dead. We need to pray and call.
The Attorney General sends his greetings. I think this is a very important issue. We are a nation of laws. The question becomes, which law? Is it law that we're making, or is it law that somebody else makes for us? And that's one of the concerns you have whenever you look at the U.S. Senate. You start having treaties. You know, be very careful about some of the treaties the U.S. Senate is looking at right now that the Trump administration is trying to push. One of the things, too, you just seen what the president said yesterday on the marriage issue. It brings to mind a story that Abraham Lincoln told. He said that the dog has 4 legs and a dog has 4 legs, and you count a tail of leg, how many legs does a dog have? 4 legs, because just calling a tail a leg does not make it a leg. You know, just saying that marriage is something other than what God defined it. Have you ever thought about the arrogance that we have in some quarters and saying we can define what God has already defined? You know, that's the type of fight we're up against. People, our country needs your prayers. This is a critical issue, and this issue that is going to be discussed today, and I just want to thank Representative Agema for really taking the shots, and he's taken a lot of shots on this, for just standing up and doing what's right. And let's give Representative Agema a round.
First of all, I want you to know that it bothers me that I even have to stand here and talk about this issue. Again and again. My background, I was a military officer, a fighter pilot, an airline pilot, and then I ran for office because I didn't like politicians, and it confirmed all my suspicions at times. But I swore to defend the Constitution against all enemies, foreign and domestic, and this is an issue. Some of the speakers will speak about this, but we've had 50 cases in 23 states and one in the state of Michigan where foreign law was interjected into our court system. All I'm asking through this whole thing is, when you enter a court of law, I do not want your rights, as we understand them according to the Constitution, either state or federal, to be abridged by any foreign law. Is that too much to ask? No. I don't think the bill. In addition, you will see other sheets in your packet with endorsements from interfaith leaders as well as the heavy-hitting national security leaders, including former CIA Director James Woosley and senior military defense and intel personnel. So, folks, a lot of people support this because they see it coming. And my problem is, a lot of the leadership, even here in the House and the Senate, do not understand the tsunami that's coming our way. It's coming, it's here, and it's meant to destroy America. I don't want that to happen.
The majority of Germans in Germany were not Nazis. The majority of Russians were not communists, and yet the communists dominated, and yet in Germany the Nazis dominated. We always had a small militant group that controls what happens in a nation. So the fact that only a certain percentage of Muslims go to a mosque does not impress me that much if those certain percentage are militant, have an idea and a mission, and they're performing it. Now we know through studies that 3 out of 4 mosques in the United States are controlled by those who are anti-West, anti-American, anti-Israel. And they're getting their money from Saudi Arabia and other places. That's where those imams are trained. But before I start, I want to say something about Dave Agema, a fighter. Now, you know, the press release that was initially developed had a quote from Mr. Agema. And it said, millions have fled persecution from oppressive regimes to come to America, whose bulwark of freedom is our Constitution. Then the next line. Do we want to remain America, or do we want to be like Saudi Arabia, China, or Iran? That line. You know what? The Legislative Communications Department said he had to take out that line. He had to take out that line. Do we want to remain America, or do we want to be like Saudi Arabia, China, or Iran? Why? Now, as Dave mentioned, I'm the President and Chief Counsel of the Thomas More Law Center. But my talk to you today is a personal talk. And I'll tell you why. And I'm not representing the Thomas More Law Center today. I'm representing Richard Thompson. And there's an emotional reason for me to be here today. I have one son, his second year at West Point. I've got a second son that's ready to start at West Point. And my son at West Point says every couple of days during their dinner, they get an announcement that another cadet has died in Afghanistan or Iraq, defending a constitution that says Sharia law will be the law of the land. Sharia law that destroys every non-Muslim religion in its sight. You either have to convert, you have to pay the jizya, or your neck is chopped off. A few years ago, out of curiosity, we did a Freedom of Information Act request to the Department of Defense. We wanted to know how many Christians had died in Iraq. Their response back was, according to self-identification, at least 67% of the military that died defending Sharia law and the Constitution that embodies Sharia law were Christians. And yet, here in America, we are afraid to stand up for the Constitution of the United States. There's been no attempt to impose Sharia law in the United States. You know, well, there was a New Jersey case where a guy, a husband, a Muslim, beat his wife and sexually assaulted her because he said, under Islamic law, whenever I want sex with you, you have to give it to me. She went to court to try to get a restraining order. The trial judge said, wait a minute, he's a Muslim, and according to his laws, That's correct. Anytime he wants sexual favors from you, you have to get it. You give it to him. That was the law until it got up to an appellate court, and they got some sense, and they said, wait a minute, that's not true. Okay. But that was a case where in the lower courts, they did impose Sharia laws. And maybe if they had a law like we have now in effect, that judge would have thought twice before doing that. But then there's this case in Pennsylvania, just recently got onto the internet. There was a Halloween parade last year, and there was a guy that was dressed up like a Mohammed zombie, walking in the parade next to the person that was dressed up like a Jesus zombie. And a Muslim saw the Mohammed zombie and went out of his way, got into the parade, and attacked him and beat him. The police were there and they took the reports. It got to court, and the judge said, well, you know, you insulted Mohammed. That's blasphemy under Islamic law. He had no criminal intent, so he dismissed the case. Sharia law in New Jersey. Maybe if they had that law, our law that we're talking about, 4769, is it? 4769, the judge would have thought twice before he did that. And then we come to Michigan. Michigan Court of Appeals. The case of Tarkonda versus Pinjari. This is a case between a wife and a husband who are Muslim citizens of India. They got married in India in 2001. They resided in Michigan from 2006 to 2008. Then the husband moved to New Jersey, and now comes the Sharia law aspect. It's called the triple talaq. And that is, a husband can say, I divorce you 3 times, and there's a divorce. So the husband goes back to India, and he does the triple talaq. I divorce you, I divorce you, I divorce you. He's divorced. The woman is never notified about what's happening. She's in Michigan. So she files a lawsuit in Michigan for a divorce and child custody. It gets to the circuit court, and the circuit court judge says, wait a minute. Your husband has already gotten a divorce from you through the triple talaq. Therefore, I'm dismissing your case. And the case was dismissed. Luckily, it went up to the Michigan Court of Appeals, and they said, wait a minute. This violates due process. This woman was not even aware of the loss of the talaq in India. With this law in effect, that judge would have realized that violation of notice provisions and are violations of due process, constitutional right, and would not have allowed it. And I could go on and on where laws are being perverted, or court decisions are perverting American law for the benefit of Islamic law. It's interesting that the main opposition to 4769 comes from CARE, Dawood Mali. This is the same guy that about 2 weeks ago filed a lawsuit against the FBI and Homeland Security on the basis of what? They violated the American Constitution. Okay? They don't have any problem using the American Constitution.
The presentation here this morning is going to address American judges, and specifically Michigan judges, citing or authoritatively relying on transnational law or some other law to which you had no role in the making of. You didn't elect the person that wrote the law. You were not part of any sovereign system that placed a judge in place that may have put down the legal principle. But nonetheless, an American judge would be relying on that authority to make American law, bypassing your state legislature here in Michigan or your United States Congress, if we were talking Washington, D.C. You know, as a professor or a teacher now, we think in theories, and I kind of said, well, how is this happening? And what is causing judges at the federal level, at the state level, to feel like they can rely on authorities to which no American ever had any participation in the making of the law? And what I've come up with, I think, is that people tend to use the courts to advance a political agenda when they don't have enough votes to get their position through the politically accountable branch of government, the legislature. Now, I look around the room and I see a lot of conservatives here, and I think we should be careful to understand this is a bigger issue. This is not a Republican or a Democratic issue. This is not a conservative or a liberal issue, because historically in the past, you know, we conservatives have from time to time used that same technique, not using international law, but used the technique of the courts to advance an agenda. But what I want to focus on today is how dangerous that is to constitutional democracy. What do you call a person who has the power to make law that will subject the citizens by force of law and punishment, and then the person that makes that law isn't accountable to the people? Either that or a judge these days, I guess.
Hi, I'd just like to connect a couple of dots for everyone here. I'm Beth Griffin. I'm from the Southwest Michigan side of the state. And Amanda, you said that 13% of Muslims go to mosque, and you were questioning the number, which I agree with you on that. And then Mr. Thompson said something about CARE and how CARE likes to complain and use our Constitution against us. Well, you guys need to know something. United States-wide, CARE has less than 4,000 members. Do you know how many members, for example, just the Southwest Michigan Tea Party has? 1,200 last I counted. But you need to put it into perspective. CARE makes a lot of noise, and they want to shut us up, and they want to make us be good Americans and not diss anyone else's religion, and not make waves and try to be nice and go by the golden rule. But this is not their game plan. They will do anything to advance their agenda, and that is not to preserve the U.S. Constitution. So I suggest that the next time you hear Fox News quoting CARE, you remember that? Yeah. Because there are still a lot of good people that still don't understand why CARE gets a lot of flack, and it's because they deserve it.
But I think it's tied in. A lot of us in this room, while passionate about passing ALAC, are also passionate about what's happening in our schools, because this is where it's going to change for all of us. And when they take the hearts and the minds of our children in our public schools, and it's insidious. Any of you who have IB, International Baccalaureate programs in your schools, need to know that, Mr. Thompson, you talked about the UN, that we need to get rid of the UN. This program is tied to the UN. Everything that they believe. Know that in the diploma program, one of the tracks is on Islam. They don't teach American government. They don't teach U.S. history. The IB programs, they don't teach World War I, World War II, the American Constitution, but they're an entire track on the rise of Islam from 672 to whatever. They teach the Israeli-Palestinian conflict from 1948 until 1970 something, and leave out all the history of where that came from. So as much as we need to be involved with ALAC, and it's imperative that we pass this, we need to know, because what's happening to our children in schools, we talked about universities, if we don't stop this, it won't matter, because they're our future generation who is going to be making the decisions for us. As my kids said, I'm going to choose your nursing home.
Yeah, I'm trying to kind of understand what we're up against. Now, the way I see it is K through 12, we don't teach the Constitution. Then when they go to college or wherever after that, we don't teach the Constitution. Then when they go to law school, I'm not a law school graduate, I'm a medical school graduate, so I didn't learn the Constitution in medical school. But I understand they only teach precedent, they don't teach the Constitution. So now you have these people coming out and becoming judges. They don't know anything about the Constitution, I guess, that's what I understand. So then I hear about precedent, and so it doesn't really matter what the Constitution says because precedent is really what's important.
Actually, precedent doesn't matter anymore. You just go look and find an international case if you can't find the one you want here in the U.S.
Okay, so what I'm thinking is, the whole idea of this Sharia stuff is to get just a few things, be persistent, and then get some things in and they become precedent. I mean, is this kind of what they're trying to do? I just am trying to understand what we're up against. Does that make any sense, my question? And oh, by the way, I have a West Point grad 2011 class.